Hey everyone, Ro here. Today we are talking The Mummy and just why it is the perfect adventure movie. No, not the rebooted Tom Cruise attempt a few years ago, but the true adventure epic, released way back in 1999. So let's waste no time and just jump straight in. So straight from the intro of this movie, we are immediately brought into the majesty of ancient Egypt, a setting that just evokes a sense of wonder. And here we're given the background of Imhotep, which in essence is a love story, an ancient Egyptian retelling of Romeo and Juliet. While his love story doesn't make him right, or even a good person, it does give us, the viewer, an immediate measure of understanding on just what drives his purpose. It's commonly said that all good villains truly believe what they are doing is the right thing, and it's hard to argue that Imhotep isn't the perfect example of that. And this intro perfectly symbolises one of the main beauties of this film's success. And that is its pacing. The premise is set up and the adventure begins immediately, but without erasing that sense of the unknown. The adventure continues along constantly, yet manages to never feel too fast or too slow. There's no moments you're left bored, or conversely lost and left behind. And all the while the elements of development subtly unravel in a very natural way as you go. The grandeur of the adventure, the blossoming love story, and the unveiling of Imhotep himself, it all feels like a natural adventure. And on that point, there's nothing that screams adventure quite like the early 20th century time period, before technology dominated everything, and a time when mystery and legends still had their place in the world. That element of romance and imagination still left intact. And this all leads me on to the casting. Man, did they nail it for this movie. Brendan Fraser as Rick O'Connell looks every inch the action hero. He's the dude the guys want to be and the girls want to be with. I mean, let's just give a guy credit. He pulls it off. He's got the comedy running through the character, but it's always balanced and harnessed by the rugged tough guy. Very much the mold set by a certain Indiana Jones. However, in all honesty, you'd probably put your money on O'Connell in a fight. I know, that's almost blasphemous to say, but go back and give this a watch. O'Connell is your straight up tough guy. But that said, it's Rachel Weisz as the mild-mannered Evelyn who is equal parts the star of this movie. I think I can speak for every young lad of the 90s when I say there's not one of us alive who did not have a major crush on this woman. And she carries the part of the shy, innocent bookworm equally as magnificently as Brendan Fraser does the tough guy O'Connell. And in truth, maybe even more so, as the character of Evie blossoms out of the typical damsel in distress role she begins the story within. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention John Hannah as Jonathan, Evelyn's scoundrel brother who rounds out our intrepid trio. Yes, Jonathan is the main comic relief here, but he absolutely holds his own as a more than compelling character in his own right. And that's because the comedy is interspersed throughout this adventure, not being forced onto one over-the-top character. The chemistry between the cast is just great here, and in particular these main characters. And I'm not simply talking of the love story, which does absolutely have more than some sizzle between Fraser and Weisz. But honestly, the interplay between all three is just absolutely magic. Whether it's O'Connell and Jonathan's reluctant growing friendship, the sibling relationship of Jonathan and Evelyn, or that blossoming romance and attraction, it's all simply fantastic. And it's something that rightly tried to be repeated in the recent Jungle Cruise movie, in my opinion, which is a great adventure movie in its own right, but as a complete trio it just can't match what The Mummy brought to the table some 20 years earlier. The adventure flows along so smoothly you might not even realise that it's a full hour and half of the movie before Imhotep himself is even unleashed upon the world. And all credit to that has to go to not only the beautiful script, direction, amazing chemistry, but the soundtrack too. Oh man, did Jerry Goldsmith create something magical here. I said earlier there's something majestic about the setting of ancient Egypt. Well, it's Mr. Goldsmith's soundtrack that just absolutely brings it to life. It is astounding. Do yourself a favour, search the Mummy soundtrack on YouTube, press play, close your eyes, and just let your imagination fill you with wonder as that soundtrack fills your ears. You will immediately be encapsulated by the sense of, well, the sense of adventure. And I know that may be repetitive, but it's simply the best way to describe it. If you've listened to it before, you will understand. Now, knocks on this movie may well be the late 90s CGI. And yes, it does look dated, particularly on Imhotep's first few appearances, but it's pretty minimal and that's about it. The rest of it still holds up really well, and that may well be because this was still a time where sets and props were used over CGI everything, so it will continue to stand the test of time, and probably more so than its sequel The Mummy Returns, which by the way is a great film in its own right. However, from the majestic desert sands, the depths of the tombs or the monumental temples, The Mummy is simply a perfect adventure movie. The script is fantastic, the casting is perfect, the chemistry enticing, and the soundtrack astounding. Quite simply, in this day and age, this movie is criminally underrated. If you haven't seen it in a while, or maybe never even seen it, do yourself a favour. Settle down on the sofa, grab yourself some popcorn, and watch this movie. You will quite simply not regret it. But that's it for today, guys. What did you think of The Mummy? As always, leave your thoughts in the comments below. I love to read them. If you enjoyed this content, please consider dropping a like and subscribe to help the channel grow. And I'll see you all again real soon.